So today we're going to be making a very simple, effective bowstring. And all you really need to do it is scissors and bowstring material. This is B50 Dacron, and it's maybe $15 a spool, which will get you a lot of strings. But first, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I am finally at a point where I'm going to start putting out more content weekly. I bought land about 1.5 years ago. You can check out the other video on the channel updates if you want more info on that and the little homestead we got going here. But let's get into the video on making the string. This is one I made probably 7-8 months ago. Still shooting strong, no problems with it. We're going to be making it on my buddy's recurve. This is one that I made probably 10-11 years ago for him, back when I was still making fiberglass bows. And we're going to start with this, make a string for it, show you the method. So the first thing you got to do is figure out a starting point for length. And I usually take one strand, get it cut to about 1.5 feet on either side of the bow. So that gives you plenty of room to work with for counter twisting the loop ends. So I'm going to cut 7 of each color, get those bundles set up, and I'll show you how I actually make the string. For the making of the string, once you have your bundles, we have 2 bundles, 7 in each, you're going to get about 1.5 feet, about 16 inches on one end. And we are going to just simply cross these. See if I can get it closer. I'll show you closer up in a second. But just going to cross them one over the other. So what you have is just a spot to hold for your continuous for your counter twist. So we're going to counter twist all the way down to here, and that's going to be what we back weave through to make our loop. And if you don't know counter twisting, you're just twisting it tight, flipping it over, twisting it tight, flipping it over, twisting it tight, flipping it over. And we're going to go down this whole end to the very end of this, and then you can tie a knot on the end here. So and you can get pretty quick at this when you get going. It doesn't take long to make a finished bowstring. I can do this in about 15 minutes. The advantages to this compared to like a completely twisted string is you don't lose performance. This performs like a continuous loop string. You don't need a jig to make it. You can make an extra very quickly and in the field adjust it to your bow length if you need. And if you make one of these sides longer, you can actually adjust it about 1 inch or 2 as far as length if you want to change your brace height. And once they stretch, if they stretch too much, you can also make up for that. Once you have enough to work with, where you can get your loop size and back feed this through the counter twist, this is where you do tie a knot. I tie this just in a regular old knot at the end and cut off the excess. And we're just going to tie it in a knot so it doesn't come undone. And we're going to leave it about 2 inches past. This you can twist up. And here, once we have that through and our loop made, you're going to keep this process going. Up and down, back and forth through this thing. Undoing it. And then we went down, so now we're going to come back up through this side. Right there. So each one of these is just a back and forth weave through your counter twist. I like to pull them tight. We're going to go down to the next one. So now we're going to attach our first loop on the bow. And the second part that you have counter twisted, you're going to find that rough point of where you want your second bow loop. Again, this one's probably about right there, just about 4 inches shorter, and you can adjust this going back and forth. And then once you have that point, knocking something over, this is where you figure out your loop size. That's about what we want for the loop size. And you can pinch it with your fingers. And you're going to untwist. You see what I'm doing here? Opposite direction, untwist. And that is where you're going to feed it through. So you feed that first one through tight, twist it back up. You can see that we have our loop holding. No, we're not shooting right now, bud. It is a stout bow. And it looks pretty good as far as height. String's ready. If you wanted to adjust this, you can undo your twist as long as you leave length. Like this side, this is the longer side here. We left enough counter twist back weaves that you can come back one or two or feed it forward one or two to shrink your loop size or make it a little bit longer. I'll show you. So usually I make one shorter end. So this one, the counter twist, a little bit shorter, gives me enough so I can get 7, 8 back weaves. And then that's where I'm going to melt this down and finish this end. But if you need to adjust it, you can make both sides of the counter twist longer. It's kind of personal preference on how much you want to add to weight and twist on the end. This side is the longer side. And if you wanted to adjust this string, all you have to do, undo your weaves. So you can undo each weave, go all the way back through, and just keep undoing it. And then you can make your loop longer. You can tighten your loop. You can change the point where you started on your loop if you go all the way undone. And just redo it again. Once it gets in there, you've changed the length of your string. But this makes a very serviceable, easy to make string. Now we're just simply going to leave about, I'm not going to adjust this string, it's actually just about perfect, so I'm going to cut this off, leaving about, 3/4 inch. And we're going to melt this down. You don't want to burn your bowstring. I couldn't find my lighter, so I'm using the torch. But you just want to get a nice little bead on the end of that. It acts as like a second safety if this string was to ever slip out of there, which I've never had it happen. And it makes it so they don't fray on the end. So there, guys, we have our finished bowstring. I mean, you can serve it, like I said, on the ends. You can serve the center. But you have something that can shoot, hold, be adjusted, and not lose performance or need a jig for. And you can see this will have 2 strands almost that you can still separate, but as they get used, they tighten up and form one nice bowstring strand.